From the Presidential Palace, Manila, Dateline Malacañang.
Good day, this is Dateline Malacañang, and here are the news. Malacañang rejected claims that Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. failed to deliver on his pledge to hold accountable those involved in alleged flood control anomalies, citing arrests, issued warrants, and the recovery of illicit funds within months of the investigation. Palace Press Officer and Communications Undersecretary Attorney Claire Castro said the president never named individuals when he earlier remarked that some people would not have a Merry Christmas, but stressed that tangible enforcement actions had already been taken. Castro said that in just over 4 months, the government has recorded unprecedented developments in corruption cases tied to flood control projects. Castro said those already detained clearly fell under the president's remark. She emphasized that the process is ongoing, with the president's awaiting key resolutions.
Ang binanggit po ng Pangulo doon sa kanyang report ay sa mga taong nabanggit niya, marami ang hindi magiging merry ang Christmas. Wala naman siyang binanggit kung sino ang pangalan. Pero tandaan natin, sa higit na 4 na buwan, may mga nakulong, may mga warrants of arrest na na-issue, may mga nagtago, mayroong nakikipag-usap at nagsisettle at ibinibigay, restitution, isinusole ang karamihan sa kanilang mga kickbacks na hindi naganap, never nangyari sa anumang administrasyon. Sa administrasyon lang po ni Pangulong Marcos nangyayari ang mga ito. Pag sabi po niya na mayroong mga taong hindi magiging merry ang Christmas, yung mga nakulong po, definitely, hindi naging merry ang Christmas. Pero hindi pa naman po natatapos ito. Kung meron pang inaabangan ng mga tao, meron din pong inaabangan ng Pangulo. Hinintay din po ang Pangulo ang mabilisang resolusyon na magbumula sa Ombudsman at sa DOJ. Kung lahat na maaaring sangkot ay matibay ang ebidensya, at yun naman ang gusto ng Pangulo, due process ay inoobserba, hindi pa po natatapos ang termino ng Pangulo. Marami pa po ang mangyayari at magaganap.
Over a dozen individuals have already been detained, mostly officials and personnel of the Department of Public Works and Highways, as well as private contractors, including Cesara Rowena Saradiskaya. Former lawmaker Zaldeco, who was tagged among those behind the anomalies, remains at large. Asked about the status of the Independent Commission for Infrastructure, or ICI, investigating the anomalies, Castro said no replacement has been announced despite the departure of its key members. She added that the Ombudsman has committed to sustaining the probe.
Sa ngayon ay wala pa po tayong, hindi po tayo nabibigyan ng update kung magkakaroon po ng replacement. At sa kasalukuyan po ay nagtatrabaho pa rin po ang mga nasa ICI. At nandyan din po ang Ombudsman na nangako na magpapatuloy po sila at na nandyan po rin po pa rin ang enthusiasm na pabilisin ang pag-iimbestiga sa mga nasampahan na ng kaso. So, hindi naman po titigil. Kahit po sabihin natin na isa na lang ang miyembro ng ICI, nandiyan pa rin naman ang executive director, patuloy pa rin po ang pag-iimbestiga. So, hindi po titigil sa pag-iimbestiga.
Palace Press Officer and Communications Undersecretary Attorney Claire Castro.
Dateline Malacañang.
Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. has ordered the Philippine Coast Guard, or PCG, to board and inspect all dredgers operating in Manila Bay reclamation projects amid renewed concerns over vessel identity, ownership, and compliance with Philippine laws. Palace Press Officer and Communications Undersecretary Attorney Claire Castro told reporters in a message on Tuesday. The directive comes days after a maritime security analyst flagged a Chinese origin dredger allegedly broadcasting multiple identities while operating in Philippine waters. In an article published Monday, Ray Powell, Director of Maritime Intelligence Group of Sealight, reported that the dredger Kang Ling 539 has transmitted at least 30 different vessel identities while shuttling between Manila Bay and a dredging site in Zambales for more than 2 years. According to the report, the dredger has operated under at least 6 different flag states, including the Philippines, Sierra Leone, China, Sao Tome, and Principe and Panama, raising red flags over possible violations of maritime and domestic regulations. Under Philippine law, dredgers transporting sand between Philippine points must be at least 60% Filipino-owned, Philippine-flagged, and registered and crewed by Filipino nationals. Foreign-owned or foreign-flagged vessels are prohibited from undertaking dredging operations unless they are reflagged and placed under qualified domestic ownership. The President's latest directive follows his earlier order in May 2025 for a nationwide probe into dredging and reclamation activities issued amid mounting environmental concerns and reports that sand sourced from Philippine waters may have been diverted to Chinese land reclamation projects.
Dateline Malacañang.
Malacañang said Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. is confident that the clean and well-prepared 2026 national budget can withstand constitutionality concerns that may be raised before the Supreme Court or SC. Palace Press Officer and Communications Undersecretary Attorney Claire Castro said this during a press briefing when asked if the 2026 General Appropriations Act or GAA could pass scrutiny. Castro made a statement after House Senior Deputy Minority Leader and Caloocan 2nd District Representative Edgar Erice announced his plan to question the constitutionality of the 2026 national budget before the SC, citing the presence of unprogrammed appropriations. In an interview on Monday, Erice said the petition was being drafted. Castro said the palace respects moves to challenge the validity of the 2026 GAA.
May karapatan po sila na dumulog sa Korte Suprema at tanungin kung unconstitutional ang parte na to ng 2026 national budget. So, tignan naman po natin, of course, kapag po sila nag-file ng petition, sasagot naman po ang administrasyon at tignan na naman po natin kung ano magiging resulta at magiging desisyon ng Korte Suprema. Opo, confident po sila na ang ginawa po ngayon na budget ay ang pinakamalinis, pinakamaayos, at ito'y para sa taong bayan. So, confident po ang Pangulo.
President Marcos on Monday signed Republic Act 12314 or the 2026 GAA, containing the 6.793 trillion pesos national budget for 2025, the largest annual spending plan in the country's history. The 2026 national budget is aligned with the government's medium and long-term development plans and is focused on uplifting the lives of Filipinos by sustaining momentum in education reform, health protection, food security, and job creation. President Marcos vetoed 92.5 billion pesos in unprogrammed appropriations standby funds that are released only under specified conditions to ensure that public funds are spent in service of national priorities and not treated as discretionary or blank checks. He said the safeguards will be enforced without exception to serve the public interest and advance the country's national development goals.
Dateline Malacañang.
Malacañang said there is no information so far on the rumored reorganization of Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr.'s cabinet amid reports of another shake-up in key government posts. Palace Press Officer and Communications Undersecretary Attorney Claire Castro said they have not received any official information regarding a possible cabinet revamp, stressing that reports circulating online may simply be rumors. An online news report earlier claimed that the president was preparing during his most extensive cabinet shakeup yet, saying that at least 9 officials stand to be affected. Castro, however, said that a performance evaluation of cabinet officials remains ongoing, noting that this is a regular process under the administration.
Wala pa po tayong natatanggap na anumang balita. Baka may nagpapakalat pero as of now wala po. Yes, sabi nga natin, we are making our performance at the discretion of the President. So, depende na po yan kung ano po ang makikita ng Pangulo. Pero as of now, wala po tayo nababalitaan, wala pong ipinararating na magkakaroon po ng cabinet revamp.
Speculation about a possible reshuffle resurfaced following previous cabinet changes under the Marcos administration. In May last year, the president directed all cabinet members to submit their courtesy resignations, triggering a major revamp that saw the replacement and reassignment of several secretaries in key agencies. Another round of changes followed in November when the president replaced the executive secretary and the heads of Department of Finance and the Department of Budget and Management.
Dateline Malacañang.
Malacañang said Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. will not intervene in any move to file an impeachment complaint against Vice President Sara Duterte. Speaking to reporters, Palace Press Officer and Communications Undersecretary Attorney Claire Castro said the filing of an impeachment complaint by any group is beyond the President's mandate. She added that the bid to impeach Duterte has not been discussed in any meeting convened by President Marcos. Castro, however, emphasized President Marcos's firm stance, which she said applies to everyone, that those who must be held accountable should be held accountable. Complainants in the consolidated impeachment complaints against Duterte are keen on having the case refiled once the one-year ban rule lapses in February. They are reportedly planning to use the testimony of Ramil Madriaga, an alleged former civil intelligence agent of Duterte, as a possible basis for a new impeachment complaint. In an affidavit, Madriaga claimed he served as Duterte's bagman and that the campaign funds she used in the May 2022 national elections were sourced from drug lords and Philippine offshore gaming operators or POGOs. In July 2025, the Supreme Court unanimously ruled that the Duterte impeachment was invalid. When asked about the characterization of the ongoing case as a failed impeachment, Castro clarified that the matter is still pending before the Supreme Court.
Ang pagsasampa po ng impeachment complaint ng anumang grupo ay hindi po ito sakop ng Pangulo. Sa kasalukuyan ay wala po na pag-uusapan sa anumang meeting ang patungkol sa impeachment laban kay Vice Presidente. Pero ang tugon ng Pangulo sa lahat, ito po'y para sa lahat. Ang dapat managot ay dapat managot. Hindi po magkakaroon ng pagkakaisa kung may naiiwang issue na dapat na sagutin. So sa ngayon, muli, hindi po sakop ng Pangulo kung sino man po ang magsasampa ng impeachment complaint laban sa Vice Presidente. Failure impeachment. On our part, we cannot say that it's a failure impeachment. There's still an ongoing pending case before the Supreme Court. Well, anyway, muli sasabihin natin, ano man ang mangyari po tungkol sa impeachment, yan naman po ay nasa jurisdiction po ng Kongreso at kung sino man po ang magsasampa ng kaso na yan ay hindi po makikialam ang Pangulo. But muli, ulit-ulitin natin, ang Pangulo po, ang nais po niya, managot. Ang dapat na managot.
Palace Press Officer and Communications Undersecretary Attorney Claire Castro.
Dateline Malacañang.
Education officials said the government is intensifying efforts to address long-standing concerns on the K-12 program, particularly on the employability and readiness of senior high schools or SHS graduates. In a Palace Press briefing, Technical Education Skills Development Authority or TESDA Secretary Jose Francisco Benitez said one of the key issues identified was whether SHS graduates are employable. Benitez said TESDA has focused on ensuring SHS graduates graduates are job-ready through free assessments and certification, noting that funds were allocated for the free assessment of SHS students, allowing them to be or to obtain national certificates or NC2 and 3. He said TESDA, with funding support from the President and Congress, rolled out free competency assessments for SHS students in 2025, an initiative that will continue in 2026.
The major issue with the K-12, no, for TESDA at least, is whether or not those that graduate from senior high school are employable. So ang ginawa ho namin last 2025 at meron din pong pondo na inilagay, no, ang ating Pangulo at ang Kongreso, both the Senate and the House, is for free assessment of senior high school students. So ongoing po yan, meron pa rin pong funding para dyan in 2026. No, and we have reached almost 190,000 senior high school students that have been properly assessed and certified as employable with the appropriate NC2s and NC3s in accordance with the courses that they would have taken in senior high school. So that's an ongoing process. So if the issue is whether or not senior high school students moving forward will be employable, masasabi naman po ng TESDA at least that we can certify that as many of them as willing to take the assessment will be employable. Salamat rin ho yan, kagaya ng sinabi paulit-ulit na sinasabi ni Chair Agrupis, nasa ano ho yan, topic po yan ng aming chat group sa aming tatlo.
Commission on Higher Education CHED Chairperson Shirley Agrupi said the K-12 program has been a priority agenda of the education sector's first Joint Management Committee meeting involving the Department of Education, DepEd, TESDA, and CHED, marking the first time the three agencies formally aligned their policies. Agrupi said a major challenge lies in ensuring the readiness of incoming freshmen for their chosen college courses. Agrupi said CHED is also pushing for a standardized entrance assessment to better guide students into appropriate higher education pathways while harmonizing evaluation standards with TESDA to reduce skills mismatch in the workforce.
Yung K-12 is one agenda na tinatalakay namin sa first MANCOM. For the information of everyone, for the first time, meron na kaming joint MANCOM meeting with DepEd, TESDA, and Higher Education para nag-align kami. Yung concern ng K-12, we share this with TESDA and DepEd. Ang napaka-challenging is sa higher education institution because we are governed by the provision of the UNIFAS law, the free higher education. So ang kinokontrol lang namin ngayon is dapat meron sanang standard entrance examination to determine whether your student ay pupunta sa gusto niyang pupuntahan. Ang challenge namin dito sa K-12 is yung readiness ng estudyante na pupunta sa pinili niyang kurso. So ang immediate na ginagawa namin is may bridging program.
Education Secretary Sunny Angara said DepEd has already revised the SHS curriculum to respond to criticisms that it was overly congested. He added that the revised curriculum allows learners to combine academic and technical vocational subjects, a shift aimed at preparing students for a rapidly changing labor market, including the impact of artificial intelligence. Angara added that industry linkages have been strengthened by increasing required job immersion hours from a maximum of 300 hours to 640 hours, equivalent to nearly one academic semester.
Yung curriculum inayos natin dahil yung criticism masyadong cluttered, 33 subjects. Ginawa na lang natin 5 required subjects. Tapos yung rest parang electives na nung bata. Tsaka hindi natin kinakahon yung bata na vocational subjects ka lang. So kasi in the age of AI, kailangan may flexibility tayo eh. So pwede siya mag-vocational, so skills, pwede rin siya mag-academic subjects, pwede niyang haluin yun. Tapos pangalawa is yung closer linkage with industry. So yung sinasabi nila na hindi job ready yung graduates ng K-12, this will take care of that. From 300 hours maximum dati, gagawin na natin 640 hours, which is almost one semester of job immersion.
Benitez said TESDA and CHED are further aligning training standards and curricula to support seamless pathways between technical vocational education and higher education, allowing students multiple entry and exit points within the formal education system. Meanwhile, Angara noted that under the fully funded Academic Recovery and Accessible Learning or ARAL program, about 448,000 tutors will be hired nationwide in 2025, supported by an increased budget. The program is expected to benefit about 6.7 million learners this year, more than double last year's 3 million beneficiaries. Angara said DepEd was also able to save more than 200 million pesos after uncovering and removing ghost students from enrollment records following a system review under his leadership. The three education officials said the ongoing reforms aim to ensure that the K-12 program fulfills its original promise of producing graduates who are both academically prepared and employable.
Dateline Malacañang.
We are temporarily interrupting our Dateline Malacañang news broadcasting to give way to the message of Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. as he attended the oath-taking ceremony of the newly promoted generals and flag officers of the Armed Forces of the Philippines and the graduates of foreign pre-commissioned training institutions Batch 2.
of the Philippines and Commander-in-Chief Armed Forces of the Philippines, His Excellency President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr.
Good morning, everyone. National Defense Secretary Ireneo Espino, the AFP Chief of Staff General Romeo Browner, and the major service commanders, the newly promoted generals and flag officers of the Armed Forces of the Philippines, and the graduates of foreign pre-commissioned training institutions, my fellow workers in government, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. We affirm once again the continuity in leadership and purpose that keeps our armed forces focused, credible, and ready to serve the nation. Before anything else, of course, I would like to congratulate the newly promoted generals and flag officers of the Armed Forces of the Philippines, including the lone commissioned graduate of the Foreign Pre-Commissioned Training Institution. Your promotion reflects the Republic's confidence in your judgment, in your command, and your ability to lead amidst pressure and uncertainty. We begin this new year now with new stars and greater responsibilities resting upon your shoulders. Yet your mission remains unchanged. It endures. Your higher rank demands sharper judgment and steadier leadership, especially in an era of complex threats, rising geopolitical tensions, and heightened security concerns for our country. Leadership at this level is less about the number of operations that you may have completed. It is also about the standards that you set, standards that shape behavior, conduct, and decision-making across the entire armed forces. Ang halaga ng isang tunay na pinuno ay nasusukat sa tamang asal at magandang halimbawa na kanyang ipinapakita, hindi sa taas ng kanyang rangko. This principle, when translated into action, will guide you to approach every challenge with integrity, with discipline, and with honor. Last year, the AFP remained focused on readiness with purpose. We advanced our modernization efforts that support both defense and humanitarian missions. On the local front, you have remained a dependable shield of our communities by protecting our seas, providing assistance during calamities, and sustaining peace-building efforts. Internationally, you represented your country with utmost professionalism through joint exercises and interoperability initiatives. These defense partnerships reinforced our commitments and credibility in the international community. With the signing of the 2026 national budget, I reiterate the government's commitment to uphold the welfare of the women and men who protect our nation. This includes the updated base pay schedule the increased subsistence allowance of our military and uniformed force personnel. More than your role as the protectors of our nation, you must also be among the faithful stewards who guard public resources. Be among those who ensure that every peso translates into capability, preparedness, and integrity. Of course, this event will not be complete without acknowledging the families of our officers. It's your support, your sacrifice, and love that is their main source of strength. Kayo ang tahimik na haligi at matibay na sandigan ng bawat kawal ng ating sandatahang likas. Kaisa ninyo ako sa panalangin sa kanilang kaligtasan at kapakanan. Once again, congratulations to the newly promoted officers and the graduate of the FCPTI. Lead well, stand your ground, and keep the AFP worthy of its name. Mabuhay ang Armed Forces of the Philippines, mabuhay ang bagong Pilipinas. Maraming salamat at magandang umaga sa inyo.
Thank you, Mr. President.
You just listened to the speech of Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. as he talked in the oath-taking ceremony of the newly promoted generals and flag officers of the Armed Forces of the Philippines and the graduates of the foreign pre-commissioned training institutions.
Dateline Malacañang.
Finally, for Dateline Malacañang, the Department of Social Welfare and Development, or DSWD, is on full alert after Mayon volcano's unrest was raised to level 3. In a statement on Tuesday, Assistant Secretary Irene Dumlao of the Disaster Response and Management Group assured that Field Office Bicol Region, or FO5, is continuously coordinating with local government units, or LGUs, in Albay Province. From alert level 2 to on January 1, due to the escalating rockfall activity and edifice inflation signaling a potential magmatic eruption, the Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology elevated Mayon volcano to alert level 3 on Tuesday, indicating an increased tendency toward a hazardous eruption. The DSWD is preparing for a possible ashfall, which is most likely to affect the southern side of the volcano based on the prevailing wind pattern in the Bicol region. As per data of DSWD Bicol, there are 122 families, or 601 persons from Ginobatan, Camalig affected by Mayon. She assured that sufficient stockpiles and standby funds amounting to 132.59 million pesos are available at the DSWD Bicol region to sustain relief operations. FO5 currently maintains 111,164 boxes of family food packs, 16,580 ready-to-eat food boxes, and 15,746 non-food items. It has already prepositioned relief supplies and logistics in 23 warehouses across the region, alongside a continuous replenishment of food and non-food items stored in LGU facilities. Social protection assets, including mobile kitchens and a mobile command center and a mobile water system, are likewise on standby and ready for deployment as soon as the need arises.
Dateline Malacañang.
That is all for today's Dateline Malacañang for Radyo Pilipinas World Service. This has been Bea Gaza-de Guzman.
From the Presidential Palace, Manila, Dateline Malacañang.